because here in these worlds lie the origin and the remedy of the appalling problems of falsehood and error, wrong and evil that face us so poignantly in the world. And because of the difficulties that life presents us with, many spiritual disciplines encourage us to turn away from life. But that is not Sri Aurobindo's view. He says that life in its origin is a divine power and a great goddess. Pure and bright from the timeless was her birth. Her moods are faces of the infinite. Beauty and happiness are her native right, and endless bliss is her eternal home. Asvapati is able to see the glorious kingdoms of griefless life in all their blissful variety and power, but he's not able to enter there, because a darker air encircles still his soul. Too near to suffering worlds his nature lived, because he's still a human being. A dire duality is our way to be. How has this situation come about? The gracious, great-winged angel of life has poured out all her beauty and creative joy onto this world of matter. But all these gifts have been swallowed up in the darkness and inertia of the inconscient. Life here is a prisoner of matter. How can it ever become the divine life it is intended to be? That is the problem Asvapati has set out to solve, and to do so he has to go down into the depths. For so only could he know the obscure cause of all that holds us back and baffles God in the jail delivery of the imprisoned soul. Our souls are as if imprisoned, and matter is always holding us back. So, after exploring the evolutionary kingdoms and godheads of the little life and the involutionary worlds of the greater life, he has to descend into the night of falsehood and evil and face all the terrors and threats, swallowed up in all the horrors of hell, where his only sunlight was his spirit's flame. But he was able to meet with his bare spirit naked hell, and then he could see the hidden heart of night. And there, in the last locked subconscious floor, he saw the secret key of nature's change. And this brings about again another transformation in his nature. His whole life part gets divinized. Life beat pure in the corporeal frame, in the body. Night opened and vanished like a gulf of dream. Division ceased to be, for God was there. The soul lit the conscious body with its ray. Matter and spirit mingled and were one. And suddenly, without making any effort at all, he is cast up into the paradise of the life gods. At last, he's found the way to enter those kingdoms of the griefless life. And there he's healed of all those terrible wounds. The rapture that the gods sustain, he bore. Immortality captured time and carried life. So this is a tremendously important realization, but the journey doesn't end there. Asvapati is not seeking personal liberation, but the way to transform earth life into the life divine. That's how he set out. So the life being has been divinized, and now he moves on to the conquest of the mind worlds. This part of the exploration extends over the next 4 cantos, cantos 10 to 13. First, he gains an overview of the whole range of the mind worlds. But first he must explore the evolutionary kingdoms of Godhead and Godheads of the little mind, where the golden child began to think and see. And there we can very well recognize this dwarf 3-bodied trinity, which is our little mind. The physical mind, forever stooping to hammer fact and form, conservative, tamasic. The rajasic mind of desire, he says, the hunchback rider of the red wild ass. And strongest and wisest of the 3, reason, armed with her lens and measuring rod and probe, trying to understand the earth and the stars, the objective universe around her. And above this trinity, which makes up the levels of our little mind, just briefly he refers to 2 higher levels, 2 sun-gazed diamonds, spirits, witnessing all that is. A huge, high-winged life thought, a power to uplift the laggard world. It's those highest aspirations of life, they help the world to make progress. And beyond that, a pure thought mind, luminous in a remote and empty air. The highest level of our mind, which can make some approach towards the truth. Here Asvapati reaches the limits of the laboring power, that is, the limits of mind laboring in the evolutionary manifestation under the domination of matter. And beyond lie the unfettered realms of the greater mind, mind acting freely on its own plane, free of the downward drag of earth. And there Sri Aurobindo doesn't show us the whole scope of this greater mind, but he shows us 3 levels that are very important to us. 3 levels of, first, the archmasons, and then the architects and engineers and mathematicians, and then the sovereign kings of thought. And I think these beings, 3 levels of beings, these are what Mother has called the formateur. These are delegates of the divine mind which have shaped the material universe that we live in. They created all the lower planes, but including this material universe. And the 3rd and highest rank, they are trying to trap and contain and limit truth in order to create these forms of the universe. But Sri Aurobindo tells us that truth is wider, greater than her forms. She remains herself and infinite. She can't be limited by this defining power of mind. So Asvapati moves on further to the heavens of the ideal. It's quite a short and mysterious canto, but it appeals to many people because of the beautiful imagery. Ideals are our guiding stars, pointing us to higher realities, higher possibilities, uplifting and refining our senses, our thoughts, our will. So he sees these different levels, ascending series of heavens representing the ideal worlds. And they, on either side of this stair, the heavens of the ideal mind were seen, the lovely kingdoms of the deathless rose, and on the other, the mighty kingdoms of the deathless flame. Two kinds of ideal which have been influential in heightening our human lives. The ideal of delight in beauty, which draws our soul to discover and adore the all-wonderful in or behind all forms and experiences. And the ideal of the power of the dedicated will, which inspires us to make effort and sacrifice to gain higher knowledge and a higher kind of life. So Asvapati is able to move freely through these heavenly kingdoms and accepts their gifts, but he doesn't remain in any of them because they're all limited. Each of them is ruled by a single master idea and ideal. Each of them presents itself as the heart of the meaning of the universe, perfection's key, passport to paradise. They may help us, but beyond them there are realms where these two great types of ideal meet and join. And beyond that, there's even a level where all high and beautiful and desirable powers become a single multitudinous whole. In the truth world, all apparently opposing or contradictory ideals are harmonized in oneness. At last, we're told, there paused the climbing hierarchy of worlds. It's as if he's come to a place where it's difficult to go further. He's reached the self of mind. I can say the essence, the Purusha of mind, the witness Lord of nature's myriad acts. And it's also the thinker's secret base. When he reaches this plane, Asvapati feels at first a tremendous release. There he could stay, the self, the silence, one. His soul had peace. It knew the cosmic home. The experience of the self is a great realization, a liberation, a form of moksha. But then he's led to another perception. A luminous finger fell on all things seen or touched or heard or felt, and showed his mind that nothing could be known. It smote at the very roots of thought and sense. Thought and sense, the senses which give us data about the world around us, and thought which organizes and interprets that data, these are the fundamental tools of mind. But he's shown that both the data and the interpretation are unreliable, even illusory. Mind cannot show us the world as it really is. What it saw was real, but its sight untrue. That must be reached, from which all knowledge comes. A greater spirit than the self of mind must answer to the questioning of his soul. So though it is liberating, this plane or this world doesn't contain the great transforming power that Asvapati is looking for in order to be able to free our world from the grip of ignorance. So in that state it seemed that to be was a prison and extinction the escape. But Asvapati remains steadfast in his aspiration and his intention, and in response to his seeking, he's shown another kind of escape. Not extinction, but a secret entrance into the world of soul, the psychic world, the seat of the mother as the soul of the world. He sees the world where our souls rest between birth and death, absorbing the experiences of their last birth and preparing the form of the next one. But then he's led on towards the source of all things, human and divine. And there he sees the deathless two-in-one, a single being in two bodies clasped, whose trance of bliss sustained the mobile world. And behind them, in a morning dusk, one stood who brought them forth from the unknowable, the sole, omnipotent goddess, ever veiled, of whom the world is the inscrutable mass. Asvapati recognizes her as the one he has been worshipping and longing for, and the power who can grant his prayer. He cast from the rent stillness of his soul a cry of adoration and desire, and the surrender of his boundless mind, and the self-giving of his silent heart. He fell down at her feet, unconscious, prone. Through this tremendous experience, Asvapati is enabled to enter the kingdoms of the greater knowledge, which I think we can interpret as the realms of the overmind gnosis. Gnosis means knowledge. In a note of 1918, Sri Aurobindo wrote to Amal, "There's a long passage describing Asvapati's progress through the subtle physical, vital, and mental worlds towards the overmind." So we have traced this progress, and now we've reached the last canto of Book 2. In another note of 1938, Sri Aurobindo noted, "It is the realization of Godhead with which it will end." I don't dare to say anything more about Canto 15 of Book 2, except to point out its closing lines. He scanned the secrets of the overmind. He bore the rapture of the oversoul. His actions framed the movements of the gods. His will took up the reins of cosmic force. So he's no longer only controlling the physical, vital, and mental energies of his own being to make this tremendous ascent. He's now become the master of the cosmic energies, imaged in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad as Dadikravan, the mighty horse of the universe. So we've come to the end of Book 2. There's still Book 3. In one of Sri Aurobindo's notes about the 1936 to 37 version, he's mentioned about the material which was to become Book 3. First, this realization of Godhead, which will end Book 2, and after that, the unknowable Brahman, then the Purushottama, and finally, the Mother. These three great states or realizations with which Sri Aurobindo evidently planned